We are live. Oh, let me put myself closer to the computer. What's up, everybody? How are you, Pete?
I've been better, but I've been worse.
Oh, yes. Don't you love our happy Monday greetings? We're all like, life is shit. Like,
It's just tough to come back from the weekend, man. When you've had a good weekend and then
mm-hmm.
got to dive back into work, it's hard to get back in there, even
I
if you love your
know.
jobs like we do.
I know, and I don't give a shit if we're insensitive because I know there's a lot of people out of work and all that, and we shouldn't be complaining. But fuck it, everything's relative, and I feel relatively shitty.
Yeah.
Um, And so, yeah, it's Monday, guys. So Mondays means we're talking movies, and hopefully the Pete curse, the phone curse, won't happen because his audio is like wonderful. We talked for about like 10 minutes before the podcast, but whatever. So, guys, we are actually kind of current this week. We all got, except for one movie, we're all in the 2020s. We're going to talk a little bit
Yes.
Lovecraft Country, give you a little season recap. I held off on it because Pete hadn't seen the finale yet, so now he's watched it. So we'll talk a little bit Lovecraft Country, maybe pick our top three episodes or something. I don't know. And then after that, Pete's going to talk Unhinged with Russell Crowe. And I'll be talking some Borat, the subsequent movie film. And then the Blackcoat's daughter. That's a more A24, Pete?
That is more A24. Yes. I believe it was 2016 or 2017.
All right, cool. So let's start with what we've been usually doing, a new feature on the show, a new segment. Check that out. Quick picks. And just some things that caught our attention. I was talking to Pete before we went on the air about how I had almost no time to do any watching of anything this week. But that's because I've been starting to watch Stanley Kubrick movies because we're doing a Stanley Kubrick ranking podcast soon. But I started like way back to his short films, and I'm not going to go into it too deep because we do have a podcast coming on. But they're worth watching. They're all on YouTube, and they're short, like actual short, like 12 minutes, 10 minutes, and you get to see the start of the genius. You even have a little bit of what I would consider like a Peter Sellers character show up in one of his early movies. Um, it's not full on, but you can see I could see where he definitely looked back on that and said that sucked, but I can make this way better in Doctor Strangelove. So I recommend these movies. I've seen Day of the Fight, which is this little documentary short about a boxer. And if you love Raging Bull, I think you'll love this movie because you'll see where Scorsese just ate this movie up and took a lot of it to use in Raging Bull. The Flying Padre, which was okay. It's just about this padre who flies
Yeah.
got a
It
plane.
sounds pretty self-explanatory.
It's about 8 minutes though, so it's not long. And then Fear and Desire, which is a movie that Stanley Kubrick absolutely hates or hated because he's dead now. And wanted to just get rid of. He wanted to burn every copy of it. But it's worth watching. It's not a good movie by any definition, but it's not horrible. It's not like Ed Wood level. But if you're
Right.
comparing it to what Kubrick did, it feels like an Ed Wood movie. Um, but worth watching. That's as far as I got. I was gonna watch The Seafarers, which is another documentary short, but it just got real late. And then after that, I'm gonna get into The Killer's Kiss, which is his.
That's yeah. That's not a bad film at all. I that was one I'd never seen before because I've
Yeah,
seen most of
1955.
Kubrick's films, and I watched that a couple weeks ago. It's really short. It's like 65 minutes long, and
Okay.
it's got a very yeah, it's got a very simple story, but it's enjoyable for what it is. It's not like Kubrick genius at work or anything, but it's a pretty fast time killer and
Yeah,
not
but
at
it's
all bad.
yeah, but I like watching, when I'm going back and watching directors like their early movies because a lot of times they didn't have what's the word I'm looking for? The resources to do what to do a 2001 obviously, or anything that came
Right.
after what we can. So you see them sometimes get stuck with a script, and it's like, make this fucking movie, and get paid. Yet you can see little touches of, whether it's with the shadows, even this flying padre, like you see some of the shots, it's like the dumbest story. It's just about this Catholic priest that flies into Mexico to this little village and helps the people. And it almost feels like, when they do those short films at the beginning of Mystery Science Theater, and they kind of make fun of them, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how to drive your car in the USA. Here is your manual. It's like these black and white movies from the 50s. It almost feels like that, because, like, and this is Padre, and he shows up here and he helps little Susie when she's being bullied. And it's like, what? But you can see where the genius is there, because, like, he'll have some real, like, kind of, um, you know, weird shots, or something like a weird angle where you don't need a weird angle, or, like, showing somebody's hand or something for no reason, and you're like, okay, he's trying to.
Yeah.
So it's cool when you watch these early movies by these directors, because you get to see them trying to break out until finally they get their chance, and then you see, oh, okay, this is the Stanley Kubrick everybody knows. So
Right.
it's worth it, and they're short. They're short. So that's my quick picks, guys, and they're all these four that I mentioned: the Seafarers, Fear and Desire, Flying Padre, and Day of the Fight are all on YouTube. Because I think the copyright expired on them or something, so they're free to watch on YouTube. So check them out. Anything you caught a glimpse of this week?
No, no, with the exception of my usual weekly viewings of Discovery and 90210, what I will talk about tonight is pretty much all I've seen this week because, as we know, Sao Paulo is now back open. So between work and trying to get out and experience life for the first
Booty
time in
call.
7 months,
That's code for poontang. Poontang.
yeah, yeah. Well, yes, these things happen. But yes, between work and experiencing life in quotation marks, I really haven't had much time to watch stuff either. So I've watched a few series, but one of them we'll talk about, and the rest I've talked about in the past. So not much in the way of the quick picks department for me this week.
Not a problem, man. I gave Pete a spoiler for season one of Star Trek Discovery. I felt bad, but stick with it. It gets better as it goes along.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
worthwhile show. It's not my favorite, but I'm enjoying it.
yeah, it's enjoyable, but like I said, it gets better. I think the thing with Star Trek, historically at least, it's been this way.
Yes.
The first two, three seasons suck. I mean, I think people tend to forget that. The people that really hated on Discovery, go back and watch season one of Star Trek: The Next Generation and tell me that's the great, epic, classic show that everybody loves. Because it is far from. It is horrible.
Right. It seemed
Uh,
like it at the time, though. I remember people got really excited about that.
They got excited, but I've seen some articles on the Star Trek Facebook sites where the fans were hating on the show. They really were. They were complaining about, like, the Klingons. There was, like, who's this bald guy? Because they wanted more Captain Kirk. They wanted more fighting. They wanted more of this, and it wasn't. But
Yeah,
it takes a while. It takes a while for these shows to find their
I
footing.
think one thing
So
that all the Star Trek series have in common is that, and I'm finding that with Discovery, is at the beginning the characters are just ideas for characters,
yes,
and it really takes like the writers and actors time to really make those into three-dimensional characters. Like if you look at the
yes,
the next generation movies, like those characters we see in those movies, they're not the characters from season one, man. Those
no.
actors and the writers involved, like they grew those characters and made them relatable.
Exactly. To a point where they can just stand around and we already know pretty much what they're thinking, what they're about. And I'll even say Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which I think is the best written Star Trek show. It's
Absolutely, yeah.
horrible. The first, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's pretty bad. For first season, second season, it takes to about the third or fourth season till that show just like blossoms into like just something incredible. You're like you don't even see it coming. Like what, you know? And even characters that I couldn't stand in the first season, first two seasons, like Dr. Bashir, for example, I couldn't stand the character. And then he became like one of my favorite all-time doctors on Star Trek. Period. You know, so give it time. I know for a lot of times we're in a culture where we need like things to come out on all working on all cylinders and just being great from episode one. Doesn't always
Right.
work that way. Some series take a little bit to get going, and as long as it's entertaining enough, which I think season one was. But you'll notice when you get to season two that there's definitely a soft reboot of some things that didn't really work in season one, and then season three, which I'm watching now, is way different, and it's almost like Walking Dead when they kind of did the time jump. Because in
Right.
Discovery they did a time jump too, way further into the future, but you notice that wow, there seems like at least for the first two episodes they're doing something kind of different. But anyway, enough Star Trek. Let's get to Lovecraft Country, guys, because I had been doing Lovecraft Country reviews every Sunday, but the show ended on episode. There was a 10 episode show series on HBO. Got some good reviews, and some good viewership. So we're looking forward to a season two, although it hasn't been confirmed yet. And how do you explain this show for those that haven't watched it? The simple story is a guy named Atticus is looking for his missing dad, but they resolve that rather quickly.
They
And
did,
then
yeah. Like the second episode, I think.
I know. And then oh my god, I'm losing my voice. And then it turns into what Pete and I started describing as kind of an anthology horror series, where each episode, or not even a horror, just an anthology genre series, because one episode it would go sci-fi, the next would be like a treasure hunt adventure story, it'd be a ghost story, it would be like
Yeah,
a
but
story
all with
about,
the same characters.
and all with the same characters in this thread. And the what would be like, how do you explain this, because even in the byline of the show, if you look it up, it only says this, like a man goes looking for his dad. So even like in the official plot line of the show, but
Yeah,
there's like
that
two
ended
episodes.
like two episodes into the
Yes,
series.
because the series is really wacky. So I guess really it would be about once he finds his dad, he realizes that there's these group of folks called the Braithwrights who run this kind of Masonic-ish, secret club, and they operate with magic. And they really need Atticus's blood because he has a
Because
connection
he's a
to these folks.
descendant of the founder,
Yes,
yeah.
he's a descendant of the founder because the founder had sex with the slave. So they're after him, and they're after like this book that was lost. So that becomes like the MacGuffin of the show. It's this book that they're both looking for, and that's pretty much it. And
Yeah,
I'll tell you, I think Pete, you said the same thing. So let me know how you feel. Because for me, I didn't really care much for that story. Like what I thought was interesting about the show is what they would do every episode as far as
exactly. Yeah.
genre
It's like the
twisting.
X-Files. It was like the X-Files. Like the X-Files had like the Monster of the Week episode, and they also had the bigger story about the conspiracy theory. But I loved
Yes.
the Monster of the Week episodes. Those were great.
Yeah, yeah, and the conspiracy, it definitely better than Lovecraft's version of it. The mythology, they call it, the mythology episodes. They
Right.
started out great, but then it soon just became like a holy mess. And yeah, and I got to appreciate. I'm like you. I think I appreciated the in hindsight. When I did a rewatch, I think the Monster of the Week episodes hold up way better
Yeah.
than the
Yeah, because you
mythology.
could watch them anytime, and
Hmm.
you don't need to watch like the entire series. It's almost like Friends in that way. Like you can watch like that one episode and be like, okay, I don't have to know the whole story.
Hmm. Exactly, exactly. So, wait 1 second. Let me show this. There you go. So so that's pretty much what the series is. I thought where it broke some ground, which got a lot of people kind of, there's a lot of buzz around the show, is that, and I think Pete, you'll recall when we had Renee on. I was trying to get her on tonight, but I think she is on her own live or doing something. But how that when we talked about horror noir, and how black people had kind of been excluded from certain genres, principally horror, but also sci-fi to an extent for a long time. So what I thought was cool about the show is how it allowed black folks to be in those genres, and it takes place in the 50s, so in a way I could almost kind of use the imaginary viewing and imagine, oh, what if this was actually a show in the 1950s with black people experiencing all these cool sci-fi and horror adventures. Wouldn't that have been cool? So I like that about the show because I was watching it with like these goggles, like these, and how it also it was kind of subversive in the way that it's Lovecraft Country. So I know there were not many, but a good number of Lovecraft fans that got upset because, oh, this show's not about Lovecraft, and it's not supposed to be. It's the idea that Lovecraft and the horror of Lovecraft, which has influenced almost everything in pop culture, right? But he
Yeah,
also happened to have some very racist views. They just kind of married this, and the monsters became more than just the monsters of Lovecraft, but the monstrosity of having to live in the 1950s in America, but also the monstrosity of being human, because as Pete wisely pointed out, and he's so right about it, none of these characters were all good and all bad, right?
right.
Talk about that episode that you really liked when he Atticus was in Korea.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's episode 7, I think. It's a flashback because Atticus is a Korean War veteran, and he has this affair with a Korean girl who's like got a demon attached to her, and she has to have sex with men and steal their souls. And the reason she picks Atticus is because he executes one of her friends. He's an American soldier. There's a North Korean spy in the hospital where she works. And he's just like, motherfuckers, man, I'm going through you one by one until one of you gives it up. And it's like, oh, Tick, man, you were a boy. Like, we're supposed to be rooting for you. And this is like really bad. But when you put it in the perspective of the show, like in the very first scene of the first episode of the show, Letty gives and she's like, "What are you reading? Like these stories? Well, the stories aren't racist, but why are you reading like these stories by racist white men and whatnot?" And he's like, "Man, like people are just products of their environment." And I think that right there, like,
He was able to, they were able to show that even for him, you know, because he shot, well, spoilers, but he shot and killed some people out in the war. He did stuff that you do in the war, which isn't always uh, happy-go-lucky, fun stuff, right? Or, well, what is happy-go-lucky about war? But isn't always following the rules of warfare, whatever you want to call it, when you're out in the war. So that was a powerful episode because it showed that, hey, anybody is capable of anything, depending on their environment, where they're from, and things like that. So I like that about the show. I like that about the show, and I think it's important those that watch it to kind of put on those goggles and not put um, our idea of what we think is righteous or woke or whatever it may be on these folks from the 1950s because oh wait up, I got Pete back. Um, from the 1950s because these folks just, hey, Pete, you're back. Um,
Yeah,
I was just saying another good point about that is how we can't judge the shows because some people were doing this. They were judging the characters' actions by our modern lens. And you can't do that. These were people from the 1950s. Like, I especially liked how they handled Montrose, the dad,
yeah,
his sexuality. You know, he wasn't able to be all out, like, oh, finally he realizes he's gay and he's come to terms with it. And it's like, but at the same time, he hasn't. And that's very much like it was realistic. It was like 1950s, you know, like he can't do
yeah.
that.
I was a kid in the 70s, and like a lot of kids I knew, like they got the belt from their parents as punishment. Like that was a normal thing. And like nowadays you go to jail for that shit. Like you don't have to go that far back to find moral standards that are completely inappropriate by today's standards.
Oh, for sure. Oh, in the 1970s, you have the car ads with the kids in the front seat with no seatbelt.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I was around when they introduced seatbelts, and people were
Yeah.
bitchy about it too. You're gonna take away my freedom.
Yeah, no, I get you. Um, so I thought the show did that well. What would you say are your like your top three, maybe if you can think of three
Yeah, yeah,
episodes?
it's actually really easy for me. My number
Mm-hmm.
one would probably be the 1921 episode, which I thought was really great in term. I
What's
think all of it
that?
has to do with
Re-
theme building.
Rewind 1921.
Yes, yes. What I liked about this is because like they really are having a hard time dealing with racism and stuff. And then they go back to the 1920s. It's like, motherfucker, man. You know, it's like, okay, you got it bad, but compared to 1921, like, things are not that bad, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the fact that, like, when they go back, Tick and Letty are like, holy shit, black people had it tough 30 years ago. Like, we're not in such a bad situation comparatively.
Man,
And I also
I'm gonna
love,
go with you. I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit too because I'm with you. I think that's probably my favorite. It's probably tied with another one, but yeah, no,
yeah,
like when they went back and the look on Atticus and Letty's face, it told
yeah,
the whole story. It's like and Montrose because Montrose he had
yeah, he lived
the
it. He
he
lived it.
lived it, so he had to go back not only to the trauma of living through that, but the trauma of his childhood and knowing his dad was beating him every day
Yeah, and
because
that
he was
was
a
a
little
real
gay kid.
revelation too, because what one of the themes of the show in terms of showing how you can't judge people of the past, you got to understand like where some of these people come from. And Atticus holds a lot of resentment against Montrose for his abuse, and then he sees him getting beat on, and he's like, "Oh shit, Dad! Like, okay, I get it."
Yep, yep, and that was a real powerful moment between father and son. And I also like that because Watchmen started their season with the Oklahoma riots, and but it was more just that it was like an action sequence. It was very visceral, you know, people getting shot, things burning, blah blah blah, and I don't think a lot of people knew about what had happened in Tulsa before the Watchmen, so it became kind of part of the conversation, which is cool. And to be honest, I only found out about Tulsa maybe 4 years ago, so it's not something that's taught a lot. Black Wall Street they call it. So it's interesting how much history there is out there that just isn't told. Um, but it became part of the popular conversation after Watchmen. But I liked what they did with Tulsa in this episode because kind of Watchmen laid the groundwork. It's like, oh look, this happened. It was really violent and it was really horrible. And then they were able to tell a story about human beings in this moment. And I thought that it touched me a lot more than the Watchmen episode. The Watchmen was just like, wow, whoa, whoa, wow, cool. It was like the beginning of maybe Saving Private Ryan kind of feeling, right? Um, Whereas this one, it was like it was the actual story, what these people went through, um, the fear, the horror, and all of that. So it's a really, really great episode. So I agree with it. That's probably my top, or maybe number two. What would be another one that you liked? Or are you on? What happened? Oh, Pete's not on. So I'll tell you about another one that I like while Pete's coming back on. uh, and that is, I'm looking here on Wikipedia so I can remember the names. I liked I Am, and I wish Pete was on to talk about that one because I don't think he liked that one. Um, hey, there he is. Pete, I'm going to move ahead with another one that I like because he had been cut off. But no, actually, go ahead. You go. Now that you're back. Is your mic on? What's the another episode that you dug, Peter?
My number two would be the Korean episode,
Meet me
because I
in
thought that
Malibu.
really enhanced the theme of the show.
That's where the one where that we find out about Jia, this Korean girl that Atticus was banging during the war in 1949, and she's possessed by a Komihu, which is the nine-tailed fox spirit, and she needs to kill 100 men to be human again. Um, I'm just talking here while you're getting your sound issues fixed. I really like that episode too, though. So I think we're kind of in accordance so far. I think that's, to me, that was the first real mature episode of the series. 1921 would be like the next one. But I even noticed with the even the score, like they didn't have any pop music or anything. It just felt like we're telling a, a serious story, really getting into the characters, their motivations, without anything flashy. Although when the nine-tailed fox does attack, that's very flashy, I guess you could say. Um, but I thought that's where the show proved that hey, we can be mature and we can step outside of our main story and still manage to make the show work, which means you really, really, really trust your themes and you trust what you're trying to tell, the story that you're trying to tell. So I give that one high marks. It's probably tied with me for with Rewind 1921. Uh, Probably tied with me. And not sure if Pete is back yet. There he is. He's back now. Hello, Peter. At least you're cutting, like, you're just being knocked off the stream, which is better than having your sound lag. Because then I can just add you back on. But we're just waiting for things. You know what you gotta get, Pete? You gotta get one of those internet boosters. That's your next outing should be that. And I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about I Am a little bit, which I'm pretty sure Pete said he didn't like this episode that much, but I dug it a lot. One reason is because Hippolyta, way back from episode one, was a character that for whatever reason I just connected with her. Like I felt like I needed to know more about her. She was just this. She seemed like a very intelligent woman who just wasn't able to express all of her genius while everybody's going out on these adventures. And I'm like, man, they better like do something with this character. Give her a little bit something more, like they did with Ruby. Um, and man, did they do it? Because it ends up Hippolyta. She goes back to Artem because she doesn't believe her husband uh, died the way that she was being told that he died, and she figures out how to use this orrery that looks like these planets swirling around. And when she figures out how to use this, she gets these coordinates to go to this observatory out in the middle of Kansas, I think. And she opens up a portal to another dimension, and she ends up traveling through space and time. Like she meets this
Yeah.
lady with this super afro out in space. She's becomes one with the universe. She befriends Josephine Baker. She becomes a Dahomey Amazon who defeats a group of Confederate soldiers. She meets George again. And it was like, wow, I just wanted the writers to give her a little bit more to do. That was interesting. I didn't expect this. And as a fan of sci-fi, I'm a mega fan of sci-fi. That's probably my favorite genre. This story just did it for me on that level. Because before then, the show was more stuck on horror slash magic, which I'm not really into magic and wizardry stuff at all. But this one worked for me on the sci-fi level, but also on the character level of this woman finding herself and being able to be whatever she can be, connecting to everything, and name yourself. Basically, is what the Afro lady in the future told her. Just like name yourself, be whatever you want to be, and that's why the episode is called "I Am." And I don't know, it just touched me. This one touched me. I know it maybe had been a little too out there for Pete. I remember he talked about it a little on his Facebook page. But for me, it really, really it worked one of the other themes of the show, which is this idea of being held back. The it seemed like all these characters could be something more, but because of the time and the circumstance, they couldn't fully be realized as human beings. And this episode gave Hippolyta the chance to be a fully realized entity in the universe. So I think that's a very important theme in the show, and something that they touched on, because she traveled through time. She met all these other women from different times, and she was able to learn from them, but she was able to be a fuller version of herself. So that one touched me a lot. I gotta give that one as like rounding out my top three. But go ahead, Pete. Are you back on or no? No, he's not back on. Well, it looks like tonight's gonna be me night. For now. But guys, if you haven't seen Lovecraft Country, I do want to talk a little bit of the finale. Definitely watch it. We'll talk a little bit of finale when Pete comes back. Pete, you there? And when you're there, just talk. I'm just gonna keep going so we don't have any dead air. Um, so we'll talk finale though when his mic is back on. And the so I definitely recommend the show. It's not perfect. Maybe I'll have a season two. Uh, like I said, we're gonna talk finale a little bit. I wasn't that impressed with the finale. It was kind of a letdown for me, but that's because it focused on the main plot line, which I could care less about, which is getting Atticus's blood. And I mean, I could give two shits. But if in season two they continue the this line of just kind of making it an anthology season, it's not even an anthology series, because A lot of these shows that do this, they'll have a whole season in a setting with a storyline that starts at point A and ends at point B, and then the next season it'll change characters and scenery and whatever, and then the next season it'll be something different. This isn't even that. It's like an anthology season where every episode is just something completely different, and he managed to more or less tie it all together. And I'll give him credit for first season of a show, pretty strong. Like I said, not perfect by any means, but highly entertaining, highly provocative, highly uh, oh, I can't say highly a conversation starter, but definitely a conversation starter if you want to talk about shows that people really enjoyed from 2020. There you go. Well, guys, Pete is off somewhere in La La Land, so I'm gonna skip his movie Unhinged and I'm gonna go straight into some Borat. Okay, maybe when he comes back, we'll talk a little bit about the finale of Lovecraft Country. Get his thoughts at least, because you more or less got mine. I thought it was okay. It was kind of predictable, more or less. I mean, I don't want to give away too many spoilers. Uh, but the story that interested me was the story outside of the story. It was the stories outside of the story. And Jigabobo was a really good episode too, with a lot of references. I felt to Toni Morrison in a lot of themes that she works on with. Now, Borat, the subsequent movie. Well, I really love Borat 1. I know a few people that don't like it because it's just way too out there, too gruesome, too cringeworthy. But it's very rare that I actually laugh out loud at movies. I'm just not a laugher for whatever reason. And this in Borat 1 got me there. I was cracking up, tearing up, laughing here in my house when I watched it way back when. So I was kind of pumped for Borat 2, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I needed a Borat 2. Um, and one of the reasons is because I figured if there was going to be a Borat 2, how is he going to do it? Because everybody knows who Borat is. I'm glad, in this movie, he kind of, he kind of already he dealt with that very early, that people knew who he was, so it became a weird movie. It didn't really become a Borat movie because he couldn't dress as Borat. As you can see in the gift there, it ended up almost being like a Victor Victoria type thing of, like, a woman pretending to be a man pretending to be a woman, or whatever it is. um, because it was Borat, it was Sasha Cohen pretending to be Borat pretending to be these other characters so that they will recognize that it was Borat. So that part kind of took me out of the whole Borat feeling. Um, and like I said, because of his fame, he couldn't really prank these people as well as he did in the first movie. And I felt that parts of it felt fake. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's a movie, right? I'm going to just read two commentaries here that I really agreed with. One from IndieWire.com in the comments section about the Borat 2 pranks ranked and investigated. The guy said something. He said, I just finished watching this movie. There are several scenes and shots that I consider fake, reenacted, or done with the help of actors. Just watch the movie again from the view of the many cameramen involved in shooting these scenes, often in parallel simultaneously. Count the number of cameras, lights used in the car scenes with Janice Jones when talking to Balalova. Close up of the book's open pages in Jones' hand. Come on, this black woman is an actress and fully integrated in the plot. How come that cameraman were inside the cabin with the right wing weirdo shooting close ups in many rooms of the washer, of the sex toys? In fact, all scenes become questionable as to unknowingly being pranked when unhidden cameras are used in all these locations: the abortion office, the bakery, the clothing stores, etc. As to Giuliani, Even he knew that a camera was pointing into the bedroom in his direct vicinity. The 1 second shirt tucking scene is artificially looped from a different POV to extend the duration of the shot. Yes, can be done, but it is a cheap trick. Some footage appears to be real, like the mass scenes. That was actually really funny. The pens, the hillbilly concert, which was really funny, the hillbilly concert. But other leave me seriously puzzled and doubtful, like Michael Moore films or some of David Blaine's TV magic, quote unquote. Too much editing destroying the overall credibility unnecessarily. Just wish all were true. And this was written by somebody called MW. And then a buddy from the Talking Films group also made a nice comment about it. A guy named Kevin, and shout out to Talking Films. And shout out to Kevin because he said the same thing. He said it felt fake. He said, I didn't like it. It was too fake. The whole idea behind Borat was the whole foreigner thing. Now it's Cohen playing Borat, playing an American. Oh, that's exactly what I said. I laughed, but it lacked the Borat charm. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even laugh. I didn't even laugh. I think there was one scene, and it was like the most innocuous scene. Is he's giving a guy a haircut, and every time that he cuts off like a half inch of hair, he shows the guy. And then he goes back and cuts like a half an inch of hair, shows the guy. Then he cuts another half inch of hair and shows the guy. And I just thought it was stupid, silly, and it cracked me up a little bit. But the actual pranks and jokes, yeah, they didn't make me laugh. Not like the first movie, and I think it's mainly because it didn't feel like this was completely like these people were completely caught off guard. Like there's a whole thing with him buying a cell phone, and uh, he's testing out Google. He doesn't know how it works, and some porn shows up, and he's inside this computer store. Actually, I went to the Twitter of the guy in the computer store, and he's like, "There's no guy here called Brian who was the attendant. Like, we didn't even know you were filming in our store." So it felt set up, but the joke wasn't that funny. Like in the first movie, the jokes were funny in of themselves, but also you add that with the fact that these folks were 100% being set up. They didn't know that Borat was. You're back on, Pete. Sorry, I was off the screen. They didn't know that Borat was. They thought this was a real guy. So you add those two elements, and it's comedy gold. This one, yeah, I didn't think the jokes were that strong. There were a few setups that were okay, but you saw them coming from a mile away, or the joke went on too long. Like this girl, she eats a cupcake with a baby in it on top. And well, spoilers, a little spoilers, guys, but whatever. She eats a cupcake. There's a baby. So then the whole joke is they go to this abortion clinic to get the baby out. It's like, oh, I put this baby in my daughter. I want it out. I want it now, out now. And it's like, yeah, okay, it was okay, but it didn't make me laugh that much. And another thing that I didn't like about it is that the first Borat, I mean, it's clear that he wants to make fun of like these more conservative right wing folks, which is fine. I got no issue with that. I thought the first movie was hilarious, but it felt more natural. One, like I said, because he was able to be Borat, and it felt like he wasn't wise enough, right? We get this sense that he is a fish out of water, and he's really not sure what certain things are. But it's been 14 years. We know that it's an actor playing Borat, and now it's an actor playing Borat playing this other character, trying to do a hit job on these right wing conservatives. Not saying that some of them don't deserve it, but it was too in your face. It was too. I guess I want to say mean spirited, although I hate when people use that term to describe stuff. But it did feel a little mean spirited, which I think takes away from the comedy. I think the best comedy is when it does you. Can't tell. It can be a little cynical. It can be a little subversive. But when you're just being mean, and it's a fine line. It's a really fine line to walk. And I think the geniuses of comedy are able to just walk it perfectly, like George Carlin, where he'll talk shit about Christians and 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 soccer moms, but for whatever reason, never comes off as mean spirited. Like he really hates these people. Um, and this one, it just felt like Borat is like, all right, I want to just be really mean and trash these folks. And I think that gets old. At least for me, it got old. Maybe if you're somebody that really hates right wings conservatives, you'll think differently. For me, it just got old real quick. And also the fact that he had this daughter of his, and she totally felt like she was acting, like she wasn't that great. It was pretty clear that she was acting, and I think folks that were being quote unquote pranked, either they were in on it, like the black lady that the guy mentioned in the comments, because she just went up with it way too much, or they kind of just figured that she was an actress. I think there's this girl that's a sugar baby that they talked to, and she was giving her advice on how to, get with older men for their money. And she later got really upset. She said she was talking to her Instagram. She said, "Man, I was told that this was like for some documentary, and I kind of portrayed it as a character." uh, and I felt that she was an actress. It was pretty clear she was acting to me, so I just went along with it. So I don't know. I give Borat 2 like a C. It's not a terrible movie, but I was watching the clock. I was like, is this going to end anytime soon? Now it's worth it for the Giuliani stuff. That's pretty funny at the end. But again, they're kind of making a mountain out of a molehill with that, because although in the story she's supposed to be a 15-year-old girl, she is an older woman. In like, if you looked at her, she looks like she's in her 20s, who was coming on to Giuliani and invited him to the room to have some drinks. He didn't invite her. Uh, so I don't. I mean, is he married? I guess that would be the only. Is Giuliani married? I don't know. Uh, I guess if he is married, that would be a problem. Well, no, his wife Judith Giuliani died in 2019. Well, he's been married three times. So he's a single guy, I think. Um, and I didn't see anything wrong with him and her interaction. She invited him into the room and was coming on to him. So whatever. If I'm sure a lot of you that watch it will enjoy it on some level, but I thought that it was a little bit lame compared to the first one. But first one is like lightning out of a bottle. It's like trying to do Airplane 2, which they did, and it wasn't as
Yeah,
good. Airplane 1 is just classic, and it just is what it is. Oh, you're back, Pete. I was rambling a little bit. Um,
I
but Pete,
am. Yeah, it's weird. Like when you have me in the waiting room, I can hear everything perfectly. As soon as I enter the broadcast studio, shit starts breaking up.
I wonder if it's a StreamYard problem. I'm starting to think it's a StreamYard problem too. Because sometimes even if I'm doing a live broadcast by myself, it'll get a little wacky. But yeah, Pete, I want you to, after you watch Borat, let me know what you think about it. Because it just felt scripted. No, it didn't just feel scripted. It is scripted in the sense that it's a father and daughter story. Because she stows away and she ends up in America with him. Like he was supposed to keep her there. He was supposed to take like a chimpanzee as a gift to Michael Pence, but she stows away
Okay.
and and she ends up with him, and he doesn't. I mean, women are considered subhuman where he's from, So it takes him a while to warm up to her, and eventually, like that's like the happy ending type thing, where it's like, oh, like they connect on some level. So I think
Right.
how much
Like
you'll
the
like
dictator. In the dictator, he was a complete misogynist, but he wins over the feminist.
that's kind of what happens here, and there's a whole feminist thing at the end. And she even gets like a little feminist haircut at the end, which is cute. Um, so I think how much people will like this movie is going to depend on this girl, which she didn't do it for me that much. I know our friend Nina from Talking Film, she really liked this and she hates Borat 1 because Borat 1 is just cringy. And that's what I like about Borat 1 is that it's absolute cringeworthy, like give
Yeah,
no
exactly.
fucks. In this one, he just can't do it because they know who he is. So he has to just be disguised as somebody else and try to make a story out of it. Like it
Yeah, he
felt like
has no
a feature.
anonymity anymore.
Yeah, and it came off more as not like a documentary film, but an actual film. Which doesn't. I don't know. I don't think Borat is an interesting enough character to carry a full length film. There is a touching scene though where he goes into a synagogue dressed as the most racist depiction of what a Jew would look like. And he because he finds out via Facebook that the Holocaust was a fake, it never happened. And this really shatters his world because his country is very proud. They have Holocaust Remembrance Day in his country because it's the day that all his army soldiers, they killed a lot of Jews. Uh, and so he's crushed that the Holocaust may not be
Yeah,
true.
I actually had a really good friend from Kazakhstan, and he hated these movies.
Oh, I can imagine. And so when he goes in there, and this part is totally scripted, it felt scripted, but then I read up on a lot of these later. And he meets with with a Holocaust survivor in there. She tells him how it really happened, and this and that and the third. It's kind of a touching scene. I think she died this year, and he's happy that the Holocaust happened too, but for different reasons than she is. Than she's happy that it shared the story. Um, but her family wasn't very happy with how she was depicted. But according to the producers, they actually talked to her beforehand. But my main criticism, just a short version before then we can move on to Unhinged, is it felt very scripted, very quote unquote fake in that sense. So that took me out of it a little bit, and the whole daughter father story didn't really do it for me. So I still think Borat 1 is classic. This one, it's cute. It's not a bad movie, but I don't want to use the adjective cute to describe a Borat movie. You know.
Right,
It's But
exactly.
anyway, before we go move on to Unhinged, give me your final thoughts on the how Lovecraft ended. What did you think, Peter?
I thought it was pretty anticlimactic. I just like okay, we all knew this out to be, and I didn't really feel like a lot was resolved, but that was okay because it leads on to the next season. It appears that Atticus dies, but well, come on, people, we know he doesn't. We know he doesn't. You got no show without that guy, so I didn't buy into the drama.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I pretty much said the same. I think for me it was just like that was the most boring part of the show was the actual plot. you know. So I didn't really
Yeah,
care if she was after his blood or not after his blood. So I for me it was a little anticlimactic for that reason too. I didn't really care much. But anyway, but worth a
yeah.
watch. Lovecraft Country, worth a watch. I'll definitely check out season 2 when it comes out. Well, let's get to Unhinged 2020. Is this a fat Russell Crowe?
He is so fat in this movie. Oh my god. He's reprehensible too. He's like a giant greasy sack of shit. It's so hard to actually identify this character as, I mean, because as Russell Crowe played a bad guy since Romper Stomper. I don't think so. He's always a good guy. And man, he is just greasy as fuck in this movie.
And what is this about? This just came out. I didn't even hear about this movie till you talked to you guys
Yeah, it
mentioned it.
was released in the theaters in August. It was a drive-in release in the US.
But go ahead, talk about it.
So
It's on you. Take
yeah,
advantage of the
basically it's
sound.
it's about road rage taken to the extreme. And, and the title is very appropriate because he is unhinged. The very first scene in the movie is him going to his ex-wife's house and bashing his ex-wife and her lover to death with a hammer and lighting her house on fire. Apparently, after this, all he wants is a nice, peaceful life. And he encounters our female protagonist in traffic, and she honks at him for being too slow, for not getting out of his way. And they get into an exchange, and he apologizes. And he's like, "You should apologize too." And she's like, "Fuck you, I'm not apologizing." And he basically stalks her for the rest of her phone. So he finds all her contacts and kills them all. And Justin, like, it takes her like 2/3 of the movie to actually go to the police. It's like, are you crazy? Like, this motherfucker is stalking you and killing your friends.
Oh God. Where can people find this
Yeah,
movie?
but he's scary. Like, he's really good. Well, I don't want to advocate piracy, but I think it might be on
There you go. That's
Netflix.
the
I'm not
correct
sure.
answer.
I downloaded it through less ethical platforms, but if you know what less ethical platforms are,
Yeah, but it was released in it made $40 million.
you
It
can
was a
find
very
it
good
there.
movie. But is it good? Interesting movie? Because I'm looking here. It's
Yeah, this year that's good, man.
yeah, I heard you mention that. Well, I didn't hear you mention. I saw you mention that the this year has been
Uh,
good for smaller movies. This
it's a
year has been
time
really good.
killer. It's a time killer. Very deep. It had the like I said.
You're cutting out a little bit, Pete. That's why I'm kind of talking over you because you're cutting out a little bit. Um, but Pete had mentioned in one of
Yeah,
the
I mean, like,
Facebook. That's cutting out. Pete had mentioned in one of the Facebook movie groups that this has been a pretty good year for smaller movies, which I kind of agree with him. You know, a lot of,
yes,
especially what Shudder is releasing a lot of good kind of independent horror.
yes.
Um,
Shutter, Blumhouse.
hmm But go ahead. Are you there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it had the potential to be more. Yeah, I'm here. No, I think it had the potential to be more because I mean, Russell's definitely like down with this character, and it's really uncomfortable seeing a guy like this is Gladiator. This is the guy who literally starred in a movie called The Nice Guys, and he's so bad, like, but he has obvious mental health problems, like,
Mm-hmm.
again, like what we were talking about with the Joker. He's having one bad day, but this one bad day actually involves him killing a lot of people and being really unreasonable. And the funny thing about it is, like, this whole situation for the girl who is our protagonist could have been avoided if she'd apologized for honking. This is all about road rage gone wrong.
What's that great movie with
And just,
Michael Douglas?
yeah, falling
Falling
down.
down. It's kind of like a falling
But he
down.
doesn't actually kill anybody. He doesn't
No,
actually
he
kill
doesn't. This is
anybody.
like falling
Russell Crowe,
down, but like,
no,
yeah. This is
yeah,
falling
Russell
down, but
Crowe
it's like
kills
an
a lot of
actual
people
evil.
in this movie.
Yeah, it's like falling down if like an actual evil, mentally unstable motherfucker had a really bad day. Because Michael
Yeah,
Douglas had some
you know
issues, but he kept it together.
what it kind of reminded me of is, have you ever seen that Spielberg movie Duel? It was a made for television movie about a dude being chased by like a phantom truck.
Yeah, I watched that when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot like that. Like, she, okay, she breaks the law,
I like that movie. No, no, I want to rewatch it because I only watched that when I was like 13 or 14. And I think Michael Russell Crowe is a little mentally unstable himself. So this might have been the right role for him. I like how these characters have kind of fallen out of grace in Hollywood. They're finding their space in these low budget movies where they're just able to just go all out nutty. Like, we're not going to get our big roles anymore because either we've beat people up or we've, said we hate Jews or whatever, put in whatever we did in our personal life that just took us out of favor. Or we're just getting old, like Bruce Willis. So now they're like in all these either made for TV. Well, now it's not made for TV. I guess it's the VOD, video on demand, uh, or straight to Netflix, straight to Amazon, and they don't have all these big time producers telling them, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that," or all these handlers saying, "Oh, you can't say this, you can't say that." So they're just in these wacky movies that are just insane. And it's in a way it's cool because it's proving that at their core these kind of unhinged real life people really want to play these unhinged people in movies too, but they just can't because they have this image to uphold and this and that and the third. So I like that. I like how that has changed a little bit for some of these actors, and we're seeing them just kind of go insane and just bloody murder everywhere. Pete got knocked off the stream, but he did have one more movie that he wanted to talk about, which is the Black Coat's Daughter. It's a Canadian American psychological horror film written and directed by Osgood Perkins, and it stars Emma Roberts, who is the girl from Harry Potter, if I'm not mistaken. Am I confusing this girl with another girl? I'm not sure. Um, but he's on this A24. What do you call it? Marathon. Oh, there he is. He's back. He's coming back. Oh, there he is. He's on his computer now. And any last words on Unhinged? Because I was moving ahead to the Black Coat's Daughter already. So if you got any last words, any final thoughts?
My
Blackcoat's Daughter is a 2015 Canadian American psychological horror.
Just
Um,
talked for like 5 minutes.
Hello? Yeah, it's going out, brother. It's going out. But it says here the plot is split into three timelines. The first two, Rose and Joan, intercut between each other through the bulk of the film before the third timeline, Cat, is introduced and comprises the film's climax. Oh shit, it's one of these Thinking Man's movies. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Let me see if we can get Pete in here. He can talk about it. But we're already at the hour mark, so we're ready to go soon, y'all. Excuse me. Oh, we got another Pete. I think he's back on his phone. Go ahead, brother. There you go. You can talk. Sprechen
All
Sprechen.
right.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Uh, my my internet actually went completely out. It died, but it is back. So while I have time, I, I will explain. Yes. So two girls, Catholic school, uh, in the company of the nuns, and well, basically, our girl here from Mad Men. There's another story going on. There's this girl who has apparently escaped from a mental institution, and she's picked up by this middle-aged couple who are going to the town where the school is located. What these two stories have to do with each other, you don't really know, but it starts to come together. Um, I would say this movie is pretty creepy. It's gory. It's got a lot of violence. It's got a lot of supernatural horror elements. It's one of those movies that tries to swerve you, but doesn't really. You can see a lot of stuff coming. But if you like gothic horror, I'd say it's okay. It borrows a lot from The Exorcist and other supernatural demonic possession films, but it does it better than most. I'd give it a thumbs up. Like, not raving, but it was cool.
Cool. Yeah, I thought this was the girl from uh Harry Potter.
Sabrina.
No, the girl from Harry Potter,
No,
Emma.
no, no, no.
That's another Emma. What's her
Oh
name?
yeah,
It's
no,
Emma.
she plays the third girl, I believe. There's
Emma
three girls in
Roberts.
this movie. There's oh no, 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 Emma Stone. Emma Stone is
Emma
the
Stone
Emma
is
in
the
this
girl
movie.
from Harry Potter.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Well, I
Well,
guess that's her then.
I have no clue. No, I'm asking you. I'm terrible with. Let me see. Emma Rose Roberts is an American actress and singer, so definitely not Harry Potter. She was in Aquamarine, Nancy Drew, Wild Child, Hotel of Dogs. I've never seen any of these movies. Limelight, but then the Blackcoat's Daughter. What's the name of the girl from Harry Potter? It's Emma what? They kind of look the same. Like a poor man's. Wait, girl from Harry Potter. It's Emma.
I've never seen a Harry Potter. Actually, that's not true. I saw one on the airplane, but
It's. How come I can't find her name? She should be like super famous. It's played by Emmy Watson. That's her name, Emmy Watson. Emma Watson.
Oh, okay, so not an Emma,
Okay.
not an Emma.
They have a similar look to
Yeah.
them. They have a similar look. Yeah, because I figured
Well,
like
no,
what's his
the
name?
girl in this GIF is not the girl. The Emma chick, Emma Stone, I think her name is. She's a blonde.
Oh, it's not her. Then maybe that's why it is. Maybe this is actually Emma Watson
No,
in the gift. Maybe that's what it is. But I put in the
no,
Black
it's
Coat's
not.
daughter gift, and I got this girl. No, then who is this girl in the black?
Hmm.
That's weird. I don't know who she is. Cause look, actually, I put it on. I think it's the light
Yeah,
because there's
but
another picture, but it's very
actually, like
blonde.
for me, the star of the movie, right? Yeah, no, for me, the star of the movie was, and I think this. I'm not wearing my glasses, so it's actually hard to tell. But I don't think this is her. But it's little Sally Draper and Sabrina the Witch. She has like a really difficult name to remember.
Mm,
I can't remember the actress's name, but she's been in a lot of shit.
I
And yeah,
got
she
you.
does it. She does the exorcist shit perfectly. Like she does the eyes rolling in her head. She barfs on nuns. She calls them cunts. So she was great, actually.
I see these three girls right here. Okay, I'm looking at. Yeah, I'll show you what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
Let me see. Uh, I'm looking at this right here. It's these three girls. Kiana Shipka, Emma Roberts, and some other girl. I could dig it. I could dig it.
yeah. That's them. Kiana Shipka. That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah, but the gift I got from this
Yeah,
girl.
and again, like eight. No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna stop sharing here. But anyway, it was all right.
The nice thing about A24 is all these like Canadian horror movies that
I
they just
noticed
showed.
it was yet another Canadian
Like
American
I had
movie.
no idea. Like I doubt anyone in Canada knows half these movies exist. It's a Canadian American movie. Yes, it is a kill feature, but the log is Canadian, and they're all horror movies.
Must be
A24
lovely
does a
living in
lot more than
Canada.
horror, but when it comes to Canadian films,
It must be lovely in
yeah,
Canada with all
I
these
don't
horror movies
think these
coming out.
movies are very widely known in Canada.
The hunting of the moose is what we would expect coming out of Canada, but instead we get like
Yeah,
lesbians trying to kill each other, exorcisms. This is kind of cool though. Kind of
yeah,
cool.
that wasn't even an A24 film, the lesbian one. Yeah. But yeah, Canada's always done really good horror movies. I mean, Cube, Ginger Snaps, the early David Cronenberg films, like
I like
they've
Doug
been
Ginger Snaps a
pretty
little bit. I
consistent
like
in the horror department.
I agree. I used to
Oh, that's a
watch this
great film,
Canadian.
man.
That was cool. I dug it. I used to watch this Canadian series when I was a kid, coming out of like public access or something. And to this day, I'm trying to figure out what the name of it was. I've been on like a bunch of what was that thing type Facebook groups, and nobody knows what it was. But it was so creepy. It was about this. It was like a teenage boy and a teenage girl that lived in this cabin by the lake, but in the forest there was like these lights. There was something out in the forest, like out by the lake, that would call this kid out into the lake every once in a while, and it'd be like this 20-minute episodes. And I never got to know what the fuck it was, but I wish I could find it, but nobody knows what the fuck I was watching when I was a kid. But I just know it was out of Canada because at the end it would be like Canadian Broadcasting System or whatever it's called, the CBC or something.
Yeah, because
Um,
everything's publicly funded.
yeah, no, it was out of like a public. If it was on public network here, it was probably coming out of a public network up there. Um, Although you might have given me a hint to how to find this show. I should look at public access shows from the 90s coming out of Canada. Anyway, guys, we've gone on for quite some time. Thank you, everyone. Although I always forget to say this at the beginning.
And we're dead. We're dead.
Thank you, everyone who watches and shares and does everything um, to show love to the channel. We've gotten quite a few subscribers. We're almost getting to 180. We pick up like one or two new
Oh, that's
stragglers every
lovely.
week.
Lovely.
Yeah, every week we get at least one weirdo who actually likes listening to us for an hour. One new weirdo. So thank you to all you weirdos and weirdesses.
Much
Um,
appreciated.
for sure. And we'll be back next week. I'll try to force myself to watch at least two things. Actually, I meant to watch
I
Witches. I
know.
just totally ran out of time. Like, that was my plan. Watch Borat and watch Witches. But then I just got enrolado, as they say here in Brazil. I just got all wrapped up doing a bunch of other shit and I didn't get around to it. So I'll probably watch Witches for next week because it is Halloween. We
Yeah,
should hit
no, it's
horror.
hard
We
for
should
me
go
too now
horror
because
heavy. Let's try to go horror heavy for next week. We'll try to find some either horror movies we've never
I did
seen.
actually. I'm going to get in a last minute quick pick here. A last
Do
minute
it.
quick pick. I did get my annual October viewing of Rocky Horror this month,
Oh
and
yeah, I
yeah,
love Rocky
that's
Horror.
that's an October tradition. Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, and it's still as great as ever. I enjoyed it. It was my first date ever with a real live girl, and I've seen it in the theaters at least 5 times. But it's become an October tradition, and definitely, folks, if you're looking for something fun to watch on Halloween, Rocky Horror, it's awesome. I mean, as
Damn, I have
nasty
a
as it
friend who
is,
still
it
has
still
never
kind of
seen
gives
it.
you.
I have one friend who's never seen it, and I keep telling her she's got to watch it. We're
Sorry?
trying to set up a watch party. I have a friend who's never seen
Oh,
it. I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah.
trying to get a watch party together at her house to watch Rocky Horror. But oh, absolute classic. I mean, I saw it for the first time when I was
Yeah, that
about
was my
14.
second favorite Rocky Horror memory. It was actually a friend of mine who'd never
I
seen it. And at my old classroom at the university I was teaching at, I had like a big screen, I had a computer, played DVDs, and I brought her and I gave her a private screening of the Rocky Horror Show, and she loved it. She loved it. So
what is it there
yeah,
to love
spread the
about that
love,
movie?
man. If you
There's
know a Rocky
nothing.
Horror virgin, either take them to the theaters to see it, and if you can't, show them and rock it.
You know, there was one here in Brazil, a live version, but it shut down. But they would do a live cast version of it. I don't know if they translated the songs or not, but I was interested in checking it out. But it was a bit expensive at the time, and I didn't have the money. I wasn't like a rich bastard like I am now, so it was like 60 reais or something. Um,
Right.
but definitely, yes. Rocky Horror's got a special place in my heart, and the music is just as good today as it was back when it was written. That's what makes it for me is the music, but also, of course, Tim Curry and the whole cast is great.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
amazing music.
so don't dream it, be it. Right? Let's do it, guys. Next week we'll try to come back with
Exactly.
some
Exactly.
horror heavy for Halloween. Horror heavy. I'm gonna try to watch an old horror movie I've never seen, but I should have. Maybe I'll watch Hellraiser. I've never seen Hellraiser. And then I'll try to catch a new one from
Oh, you want to
the
watch
new.
an old horror movie you've never seen? I bet you anything. You've
Yes.
never seen Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. 1932, Frederick March. Put that on your list. It's really short. It's like 75 minutes long. It's
All right, I'll
brilliant,
watch it. I
though.
read
It's
the
a
book,
great old
but I've
horror
never seen
movie.
the movie. All right, maybe I'll do that because I've read the book, but I've never seen the movie. So I'll check it out. But I gotta get the old version. All right. That's cool. I can dig it. I like those old movies. So, guys, until next time, adios, amigos.
All right. Cheers, people.
This is a good time. Oh, sorry.